Vichan Apasrat Chich Chuchi Suchi Hushandam Vinivija Yarasona Vinigata Amanoyanam Anvichan Apasrat Chich Chuchi Suchi Purushaha, the Supreme Person, Paramatma, Andam, the universes, Vinibhija, making them all separately situated, Yada, when, Aso, the same, Saha, he, the Lord, Vinigataha, came out, Atmanaha, of himself, Ayanam, lying in place, Anvichan, desiring, Pahap, water, Asrikchit, created, Suchihi, the most pure, Suchihi, transcendental. Translation. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purush avatar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodok. Translation, please repeat. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purush avatar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodok. Purport. After analysis, it's quite a long purport, a few pages. After analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the independent source of all other living beings, Srila Sukadeva Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and all his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are non-different from one another, and thus the supreme independence is in each and every one of them. In order to prove this, Sukadeva Goswami, as promised to King Parikshit, describes herein the independence of the Purush avatar personality of Godhead, even in the sphere of the material creation. Such activities of the Lord are also transcendental, and therefore they are also Leela, or pastimes of the Absolute Lord. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers of self-realization in the field of devotional service. Some may argue, why not then relish the transcendental Leela of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance and destruction are verily relishable by the Prakrita, or mundane devotees of the Lord. As the yoga system, mainly based on bodily exercises, is meant for the person who is too much attached to bodily conception of existence, similarly the Lord's pastimes related to the creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are too materially attached. For such mundane creatures, the functions of the body, and the functions of the cosmic world through physical laws in relationship with the Lord are also therefore included in understanding of the lawmaker, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. The Srimad Bhagavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer who creates such a wonderful working machine. That is the difference between the devotee and the non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praising the Lord who directs the physical laws. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.10, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows: Maradakshena prakriti suyate satcharam hetanena kuntaya jagad viparivatate. The material nature, full of physical laws, is one of my different energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendently all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account, and thus the material world is created, maintained and annihilated again and again. Men with a poor fund of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws, both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation, and foolishly they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent without any metaphysical control. Bhagavad Gita 9.11 replies to this foolishness in the following words: Avajananti ma mudha manusem tanam ashritam palam bhavam ajannato mam bhuta mahesvaram. The foolish men, the mudhas, do not know the personality of Godhead in his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of the Lord as something like his own, and therefore he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in the acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eyes of people in general when he descends himself by his own personal potency. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself, and the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and infinitesimal size of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. Yet his activities are different from those of the finite beings. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of this infinite energy. But the mudhas, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. They cannot understand that the Lord Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord, with full potency as the Supreme Controller. When, however, the mudhas give submissive and oral reception to the messages of the Lord, as in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam through the channel of disciplic succession, such mudhas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. And for this reason only, either in Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those with a poor fund of knowledge. So many points. You could speak for a week on this verse and not cover it all. And I've got 35 minutes. So, answer to all questions previously in the previous chapters. Narada Muni was asking Lord Brahma so many different questions, so we're hearing some of the answers here. And indeed, Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions on how one can go back home, back to Godhead. And so many activities recommended for the devotee to perform to achieve that end. So this chapter has got 51 verses. So the first verses 1 to 9 that we've previously heard particularly deals with the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this verse, chapter 10 through to 31, particularly pertains to the living entities, is encouraged to take shelter of the Ashraya, the supreme shelter. And we hear more about this Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who's just been presented in this particular verse as coming from Mahavishnu. Of course, we know we've got the three Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, or Karanadokshay Vishnu, and then Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and then thirdly is Chirodakshay Vishnu. So, and in verses 32 to 51, finishing the chapter, Supreme Personality of Godhead is beyond the coverings of the material universe, the source of creation, maintenance and annihilation. So, the first point that Prabhupada stresses is that Krishna and all his avatars and expansions are completely independent. Even when they come, they perform activities in the material world, they are completely independent. They're not dependent or controlled by any other higher power or more powerful source. So the living entity also, as the jivas, we also have that propensity to become independent. We like to do what we want when we want, and we don't like anybody to tell us what to do, generally speaking. And we saw that coming out, like with all the lockdowns we had over the last couple of years. The cat's cry was freedom. We want to have freedom. We want our independence. We don't want to be locked down, etc., etc. But what is that freedom that we're talking about? What we would suggest it's actually illusion, the so-called freedom that we're thinking that we've got. It's a little bit like Maya Paritagana, that our intelligence has been stolen by illusion, thinking that we're actually free or independent. And what is it that we're actually free from? We want to get free from. We're not free from the influence of time, are we? We're not free from the three modes of material nature. We're not free from the six enemies of the mind. We're not free from the threefold miseries of the material world. If we really want freedom, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says, that we follow the four regulative principles of freedom. That's how we become free. Otherwise, we're completely caught up in the influence of the material world. So we hear in Bhagavad Gita, Devesha Gunamaya that Krishna says, my divine energy consisting of the three modes, it is very difficult to overcome. But if one surrenders unto me, we can easily cross beyond it. So that's how we actually become free. Of course, this whole idea of we want our freedom, to give that some credibility, perhaps we can say Prabhupada himself, as a young student, asked the same question when he first met his spiritual master to be, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So he was hearing his presentation of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. So Srila Prabhupada, as a student, Abhay Charan, so he asked the question, say, who will hear this message whilst we're not free from the yoke of the British government? And that's a valid question. It's the British were controlling everything, and everybody was becoming influenced by this, British culture. So And so what did Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati reply? He said that this Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya is far more important than any mundane political adjustment. So that's the point, that never mind trying to get so-called freedom, illusory freedom, but if we're engaging in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, that's actually how we become free from the influence of the material world, free from the material body. So it's an important point to remember, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was dealing within an occupational government, occupational British government. Also Prabhupada, he was born and, growing up in that same influence. But they weren't seeing that, because of these restrictions we can't do anything. They saw the higher mission that was there. And, adjusted accordingly, but they pushed on as far as they could do in that sense. So, Prabhupada also mentions, he brings up the question that some may argue that why not relish, or he says that such pastimes of the Lord, this creation, maintenance and destruction, etc., that we hear, says such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers of self-realization in the field of devotional service. But some may argue, why not then relish the transcendental leelas of the Lord exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan? So why hear about the construction, the creation, maintenance, destruction? Why not hear about that topmost, sweetest leela, Vrindavan leela? So Prabhupada, he quotes Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti that the pastime of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by the advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord. So it's an important point, of course, because Prabhupada has, he's given us the whole range of his transcendental activities. We start off hearing about the creation, maintenance, etc., and leads right up to the 10th canto of, the Ras Leela, etc. So he slowly prepares us. But it is a valid point that Prabhupada condemns this idea that we should go straight to the 10th canto, like the Bhagavat Sapta. These professional speakers, they're presenting Bhagavat Sapta in 7 days, but they don't start from Canto 1, they go straight to the 10th canto. And so this is the idea that Prabhupada is condemning. And for those who don't properly understand Krishna's transcendental appearance and his leelas, if we hear about how a 7-year-old boy lifted Govardhan Hill, or that he's dancing at night in the forest with other men's wives like that, we will misunderstand. We'll just think this is just mundane activities of a lusty boy in different ways. So therefore we have to prepare ourselves in the beginning, listening to this creation, maintenance, leelas, etc., until we slowly work our way up. So that's the point that Prabhupada's saying. That, of course, the idea that he mentions that the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance, and destruction are verily relishable by the prakata or mundane devotees of the Lord. So the idea is that everywhere around us we see this creation, maintenance, destruction. We see a building's been built, has been maintained for some time, eventually it's knocked down and another one is built. We see that all around the world, all these things are going on. And also, like in the Mahabharata, have the so much intrigue and diplomacy and politics, and ultimately there's warfare, and the two sides are battling. We see that everywhere around us in the material world. So it's something that in the beginning, perhaps like neophyte or new devotees can sort of relate to. So therefore Mahabharata Ramayana was given to us for, in the beginning there's some relevance to that, to our own observation in the material world. But if we jump straight to the 10th canto and hear about all these, activities of this young boy performing these great miracles, as we said, sometimes it can be sort of misunderstood. And remember Bhakti Chaitanya Swami, he was giving class in Mayapur years ago, and he said previously he went to Mumbai to visit there, and the devotees said, we've been invited by one Christian group to speak there, and they didn't really reveal to Maharaj exactly what the whole circumstances was. But he said, oh, that's nice, Christians want to hear. So he went there. And but as soon as he sort of sat down to speak, immediately he was, almost attacked verbally by all these people, bringing out the so-called faults from the Bhagavatam. So what it was these Christian group invite devotees to come so these Christians can practice defeating Vaishnava philosophy. That's basically what it was. He was a little bit upset that the devotees didn't tell him beforehand. But there was one lady saying, how can this young boy have 16,000 wives? He is so lusty. Why do you worship such a person? That was on and on. So this is what happens when you don't properly understand the transcendental nature of Krishna's leelas, and you'll just see it from a mundane perspective. So, Nectar Devotion, chapter 36, Prabhupada mentions the devotees attached to the transcendental service, loving service of the Lord, may be described as surrendered souls, or as souls advanced in devotional service or devotional knowledge, or as souls completely engaged in transcendental loving service. Such devotees are called respectively neophyte, perfect, and eternally perfect. So it's not that in the beginning we should condemn somebody as he's just a neophyte, don't pay any attention like that. I mean, they consider Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada described them as surrendered souls. They're beginning their spiritual life and so, we're doing the best they can. And on this same point, Bhagavatam 1.5.34, Sri Krishna injects the neophyte with all transcendental qualities of the pure devotees. Gradually this is developed into a strong attachment to hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, then the knowledge of the pure soul and his eternal relationship with the Supreme Soul. Such is the gradual development of association by pure devotees. So the whole point is we have to start somewhere, but we shouldn't be considered that because we're neophyte in the beginning, we remain like that. By the mercy of Super Soul in the heart and the pure devotees, slowly, everybody is being brought up to the proper understanding, the pure ultimate understanding of Krishna's transcendental position. And this other point that Prabhupada mentions regularly throughout Bhagavatam or throughout his books is that the scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. So they're always happy to tell us about the laws of physics which govern, but as soon as you talk about laws, you have to talk about the lawmaker, but they've got no answer for that. It just come out of nothing, like the current theories, the Big Bang Theory, and there was no cause for that, there was no reason for it, it just happened. And the physical laws all manifested through that whole process, but they don't want to talk about the lawmaker or what caused the Big Bang, what happened, what was there before, etc., etc. I've got no answer. So one class I heard recently, Ridananda Maharaj, he gave the example that when you go into a computer store, what do you see? It's wall-to-wall computers, but you don't see anybody who's built them. You don't see the computer creator there. You see a few salesmen or salespersons, but you don't see the person who made them. So what do you conclude? They open up in the morning and all the computers just happen to be there? Or, maybe the computers have become so advanced that they're making themselves. Or, whatever. But this is, and we saw obviously somebody made them and a truck brought them to the shop. We know that. But on the universal level, scientists are saying exactly this, that nobody created. Everywhere we see in this material world, there's something that's been created, there's a creator. When we're in our house, we turn on the water, turn on the tap and the water comes out. So if you follow that water pipe, you'll go to the substation and ultimately to, the water department, and has a reservoir of water. There's a whole huge network all over the city. Everywhere you turn on the tap, water comes out. But we've never seen anybody who's made that whole system. We just move into the house, turn the water on, water comes. So we can conclude that nobody created that. Of course somebody created it, we know that. But on the universal level, we're meant to accept that nobody created anything. It just came there. So it's a bit hypocritical for to be expected to understand that point. On a universal level, there's no creator, but everything in this world that we're familiar with did have a creator or a builder, etc. So this is the point that Prabhupada's making. Or if there's some sentiment of religion, somebody may say that, well, we accept the laws of nature, but God is also under those same laws. So that's another point other people might bring up. So this is a bit like anthropomorphism, that limiting God with human limitations. So that because we're under the laws of nature, so God is also under the laws of nature. But if he's under the law of nature, how can he be God? Because it means something is beyond him. The laws of nature are more powerful than God. So it's not a valid argument. So recently we saw an article that the headlines was "Shock Result in Particle Experiment Could Spark Physics Revolution." Physics revolution. So some scientists just outside Chicago, they have found that a mass of a subatomic particle known as, or given the name as, W boson is more massive than the theories predicted. So when we hear massive, the word massive invokes something huge. So the difference was 0.1%. Not really massive, but anyway. But for scientists, that's exciting. The spokesman, Professor David Tubak, described the result as shocking. So maybe scientists don't get excited. It's not very exciting life. So when something's 0.1% bigger, that's actually shocking. But anyway. So they said that the discovery could lead to the development of a new, more complete theory of how the universe works. So this is the whole thing through there. We receive knowledge from descending from a perfect source. Scientists, they try to gain knowledge through ascending, trial and error, try to, complete their theories, put a theory together. And when new information comes along, they adjust the theory. Of course, new information may come along which throws the whole theory out, so they conveniently sort of ignore that because it's not working for us. But anyway, so more complete theory of how the universe works. And it goes on that physicists have known for some time that the theory needs to be updated. So when does the Bhagavatam ever need to be updated? We're hearing this information hasn't changed for at least 5,000 years. And coming from our point of view, coming from the perfect source, we don't have to update our theories. So it can't be, this current theory, it can't explain the presence of invisible matter in space called dark matter, nor the continued accelerating expansion of the universe by a force called dark energy, nor can explain gravity. So many things can't be explained. But anyway, so that's the situation of science. So this dark matter, dark energy, it's something that they say is invisible and can't be detected, but somehow or other it's there. So these things are going on in the scientific field. So that's the situation. Prabhupada, he very early on, he formed the BI, Bhaktivedanta Institute, which is the scientific arm of the Hare Krishna movement, to get all scientists who are coming to the movement to develop arguments against the scientists. Of course, Prabhupada was quite heavy against the scientists. At one stage he said the greatest enemy of the human race are these atheistic scientists. So that's a pretty heavy statement, the greatest enemy. The whole point is that they're taking away from the general public the idea that, you know, there is a supreme personality, that ultimately he's created everything and he's our original father, and by engaging in devotional service we can go back to him. But they want to tell us that the universe was created randomly without any cause and for no purpose, and somehow or other it's going on automatically, and that and every now and then we'll update the theory and give you some new information. So anyway, it's up to the individual what they want to accept, but there's a lot of holes in these different theories. So, from our point of view, 4:31:17, we hear the Supreme Lord cast his glance over material energy, and his glance agitates. You want to just put on this little one? Thanks. That's all right. Agitates the three modes of nature. Creation then takes place. The conclusion is that nature is not the cause of material manifestation. The Supreme Lord is the cause of all causes. So this is the answer. It's not that it's a random event that manifests without any cause. The Supreme Lord glances over material nature, and everything, all the laws of nature, everything takes place like that. So, as I said, it's up to the individual to decide whose version we want to accept from Bhagavatam. This is the version that the Supreme Personality Godhead, ultimately he's the cause of all causes. By his glance, everything becomes manifested. And just in relation to today's verse from Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 8, when the first Purusha avatar, Mahavishnu, glances over the material nature becomes agitated, and the Purusha avatar thus impregnates matter with living entities. So the jivas, the souls, are impregnated into that matter, Mahatattva. Simply by the glance of Mahavishnu, consciousness is created, and this consciousness is known as Mahatattva. So this is a very scientific presentation, but it's spiritual science. So, and the Garbhodakshay Vishnu in this verse is the second, as we mentioned, the second Purusha avatar, the second Vishnu incarnation. Garbhodakshay Vishnu enters each and every universe, spreads water from his body, lies down on that matter, on that water. From his navel, the stem of a lotus flower grows, and on that lotus flower, the first creature, Brahma, Lord Brahma, is born. Within each universe, the Lord is present as Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and he maintains each universe and tends to its needs. Although he is within each universe, the influence of material energy cannot touch him. So throughout the Vedic literature, it's the same. It's not that we have to update every now and then. It's not theoretical. The Vedic literature is presenting information originally coming from Krishna. So for those who are able to accept the Vedic version, everything is quite clear. We don't have to experiment and research. Everything is there already. So Prabhupada, he was always keep things very simple. Like the scientists may be, thousands of man-hours doing so much research and presenting papers, etc., etc. Maybe this, maybe that. But Prabhupada, he would always keep things very simple. Like when we hear, how did everything come about? Supreme Lord glanced over the material energy and everything manifested. That's can't be more simple than that. Everything keeps everything simple. So he'd also say that the existence of God and the understanding of Vedic scripture is self-evident. Lord Chaitanya mentioned this also. He used the words svata pramanya, meaning self-evident. So verse Adi Leela 7132, that svata pramanya veda pramanya siromani lakshana karila svata pramanata hani. So the self-evident Vedic literature are the highest evidence of all, but if these literatures are interpreted, their self-evident nature is lost. So as soon as we try to put our own interpretation, it's going to change the meaning. So therefore Lord Chaitanya used the word svata pramanya, that it's self-evident. It doesn't need to be adjusted or changed. For those who have developed that faith, we'll accept it as self-evident, and that's sufficient in itself. In Madhya Leela 6.137, Prabhupada mentioned in the purport that therefore, whatever is stated in such Puranas or in the Mahabharata and Ramayana is self-evident. Bhagavad Gita is also within the Mahabharata. Therefore, all the statements of Bhagavad Gita are self-evident. They don't need to be interpreted. We just need to accept. Just like the scientists, they want us to accept what they're saying without challenging. Said, we've done the research and this is what it is. Okay, every now and then we have to update the theories, but still, you should accept what we're saying. So, okay, that's their presentation. We're saying the same thing. That it's self-evident, doesn't need to be interpreted. So this point, Prabhupada keeping things very simple. There is a term, you might have studied it, heard it at school or university, called Occam's razor. So the point of the razor is that cuts out anything unnecessary. The term comes from, there's one Franciscan monk in the 13th century in England. His name was William of Ockham. That's where the Occam's razor comes from. So he wrote that it is futile to do with more things that which can be done with fewer. So that's the essence of Occam's razor. So of course it's not a new thing. Somehow or other, this Occam's razor, he was given that title. But way back in 384 BC, Aristotle said, we may assume the superiority of the demonstration which derives from fewer postulates or hypotheses. In other words, any information we don't need, it can be cut out. And Ptolemy, 90 AD, he said, we consider it a good principle to explain the phenomena by the simplest hypothesis possible. So Prabhupada's in the same thing. He just keeps things very simple. Why? He would say spiritual life is simple for the simple, not for the simpleton, but keep everything simple. You don't need to complicate things unnecessarily. So, and he gave different stories or analogical stories in this light. That, over the years in ISKCON there's been a lot of debates and books have been written about where did the jiva originally come from, where did the soul originally come from. If the spiritual world was so nice, why did we fall? Why did we fall down from there? Maybe we fell from the Brahman, or maybe we come from somewhere else. So many different points have been presented. and arguments presented, and as I said, books have been written. Devotees even left the movement because they couldn't accept Prabhupada's version. But Prabhupada didn't get caught into that debate. He just kept things very simple. And what was that? That a drowning man in the ocean doesn't care how he got there, he just wants to get out. So that's Prabhupada's version. Keep it simple. Remember I was looking at, it was a class on included the 8 elements of the material world. So as we know, earth, water, fire, air, ether. And I was trying to think, what is that ether? And as compared to air. So the conclusion that I come to was Prabhupada's conclusion, very simple. He was asked by one devotee, what is this ether? And Prabhupada said, you can feel air, you can't feel ether. That was his explanation. No need to get into anything else. You can feel air, you can't feel ether. And there was one other story that it was known as, I think Kaka Taufal Nyaya, I think it's called, but it's the crow and tau fruit logic. That these great pundits, Ghanis, they were sitting under this tau fruit, because tau fruit is sort of like a date. We know in Danekasura, where was he living? In Talavan, the forest of the tau fruit. So these great pundits, they were sitting under this tau fruit tree, and a crow came along and landed on a branch. And when the crow landed on the branch, one of the tau fruit fell down and the crow flew away. So the pundits started discussing. One said, when the crow landed on the branch, it shook the tau fruit off, and that's why it fell down, and that scared the crow, and the crow flew off. Now I said, no, it wasn't like this, and someone else said, no, it was like this. So on and on and on, great pundits, they were discussing the crow and the tau fruit. And a Vaishnava was sitting nearby hearing all this, and after a while he just picked up the fruit, cut it up, offered it to Krishna and distributed prasadam. So that was his. What does it matter? Who flew where, what fell down? Let's just take some prasad and be happy. So this is Prabhupada. He would keep things very simple. This Ockham, William of Ockham, he was quite ahead of his time. Some of his presentations weren't really accepted by some of his peers, but he said that he did not believe God could be logically proven with arguments, so mundane arguments won't get us anywhere. He said that science, although it's a matter of discovery, theology was a matter of revelation and faith. He says that only faith gives us access to theological truths. The ways of God are not open to reason. In other words, mundane reason, for God has freely chosen to create a world and establish a way of salvation within it, apart from any necessary laws that human logic or rationality can uncover. So this is basically the Vedic version, that we don't waste time with mundane reason, argument and logic. With faith, through our devotional service, everything will be revealed. Okay, we'll end there. Thank you very much. A couple of minutes for any questions at all. Yes, Ruth.
I was just thinking when you were mentioning the Christians ambushing the devotees and using that fact that Krishna had so many wives or girlfriends or whatever. I don't know the exact details, but some years ago in Poland, the Polish church took the devotees to, I think they were trying to deregister the devotees, and that was one of the arguments they used. That philosophy might be known as fighters and as brothers and wives. Anyway, So they got one of our attorney got one of the sisters, Christian sisters, on the stand and asked her to reveal the vows that she took. And apparently one of the vows that they take, the sisters, is they accept Jesus as their husband. So basically said, how many wives does Jesus have?
Yeah.
So I think the case was dismissed on that argument.
Yeah. No, it's good. I have heard that she was asked what was a vow and she didn't want to reveal. So the devotee's lawyer that you agree to be the wife of Jesus, right? Yeah. And so then the judge thought for a moment and said, also, how many nuns are there? And there's so many thousand. And the judge says, case dismissed. So yeah, no argument. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.